Hi, good morning. Right, today we're going to talk a little bit on the Chinese culture and how I see it, or how some of us see it. Now, Chinese has always been linked to the word "long," and we claim that we are the "long the Chuan Ren." Of course, we always ask, what is this thing called long or dragon, the Chinese dragon. In fact, the Chinese dragon is actually a totem image, probably is used by tribe long ago. So story has it that this is what happened long ago in probably antiquity, Chinese antiquity. There was this emperor, we always call him Wang Di, right? It's a very common word, Wang Di. Sometimes we tend to call Wang Di as the emperor, but Wang Di is actually also one of the emperor very long ago. So what happened is this Wang Di conquered many tribes and finally united a lot of these tribes. And because his idea was to have unity so that everybody can have peace and do not have war and all that. So someone must conquer the world of these tribes, which is the beginning of the Chinese tribes. So with that, they put all the tribes totem together, right? That's why they created this totem called Long, the dragon. Because if you look carefully, there isn't any of this kind of animal out there. And if you look carefully, you can see that on the head of the long is actually the deer horn, right? The body itself is the snake, and then on the snake, right, on the body, there's scale, like fish scale. And on the legs, it has claw like birds, right? And if you look at the facial, it does have a goatee like mine, and then it can fly, so it have wings, so like bird wings, So this become a unity symbol for the Chinese people. That's why sometimes we are called the descendant of the dragon, or in Mandarin we call it the Long the Chuan Ren. So this concept of unity becomes a very ingrained psychic in the Chinese. That means only in unity you can have peace. Otherwise, they commonly have a lot of civil war and things like that before they select a leader. So if you look at all the history, China always fought a lot of civil war within the country to elect the emperor. And once the emperor is elected, all knows that all is going to be well, and everyone is going to have peace, and everyone would then begin to have a comfortable life, a better life, or at least a life that is normal without war, right? So that becomes a way that the Chinese re-elect their leaders, I believe. So if you can see, after the Qings has gone, you have the war that's waged against during the World War II. You have the Japanese waging war, and after all these foreign parties have left, you could see that there's a civil war. And in fact, that is the same thing in many countries, where after war is fought against the external party, then there will be an internal war to elect the leaders. So this is a time where finally the country will be reunited and elected. So in terms of Chinese, unity is very important. So unity is a prerequisite for peace and prosperity and strength. In many Chinese story, there's always this very, very unique one where someone will show you that what unity could do by illustrating them with chopsticks. right? So they will take one chopstick and they'll break it. They take two chopsticks, they put together, they'll break it. They take three chopsticks together, they'll break it. But when they put a bundle of chopsticks together, it cannot be broken. So this is ingrained in a lot of Chinese idea that unity is strength. Putting a lot of people together is strength. As a singular person, you have no strength, and survival has become very tough. And you can be bullied. Yeah. So in a world where we think that, there's a silver kind of society, where if you look at it carefully, if you go back to what Mao Zedong has said, finally in all politics, it had come down to who has the might and the power. I mean, you can see now that for the last maybe 30, 40 years, Americans is very strong. So they call the shot, and they have little brothers like, the Australian, perhaps the European, and they have to play by the rules that's set by a country that's more powerful. And to be able to allow other lesser power to flourish, in fact, we have to adopt another form of thinking. If you ask me, if you go back to the dragon, this Wang Di actually invited all of the leaders to come together to be united and flourish at the same time. So during the reign of the Wang Di, there's also the second leader who is called the Yan Di. So that's how the whole idea of a dragon formed. So unity is the main thing. So yes, there need to be a leader that unite everybody. Yes, but all these leaders do have a say in their own tribes, perhaps, right? So if you can look at Chinese history, the other unity is formed during the Qin dynasty, Qin Cao, right? Qin Shi Huang, one of them who go a step further. What he did was he adopted the unity of language, Mandarin, right? And then currency, weight. So with all this standardization, trade can flourish, right? And the same thing has been used now. So measurement is very important, right? Unity in measurement. So it's a great concept where the Chinese culture would actually adhere to it, and is the culture that keep them surviving. Because if they do not have unity, they can't survive. So if they do not forge a united China, they cannot survive. That's inside their psychic, so or my psychic too. In a certain way, I've thought of how they survive. Yeah. So unity is important. Now, the other thing. The other thing is, Chinese is a culture where they want to encompass everything. So in a certain way, they view the world in a very eclectic form. There's no singularity, but a very diversified society, a very diversified form, which I think is got convoluted with authoritarianism and all that. That one thing that China is a very unique, very, very singular society, but it's not. It's a very eclectic society. Why I say so? Because if you look at the Chinese, in fact, it's well written in this book by Lin Yutang. He said if you look at the Chinese, they adopt actually three different philosophy. We don't call it religion, rather call it philosophy, because although Chinese have praying to gods and all that, but actually their gods is not God. Actually is a spirit of the human. We call it utilized into God, right? Or sometimes also the spirit of animals. When you say spirit, is that something uniquely about that person that they want to emulate, right? Like for example, loyalty, So if you pray to Kuan Yi, basically you are actually establishing the fact that Kuan Yi has the highest form of loyalty. So that's how they look at it. So their God is not exactly God. Their God is basically human in a certain way, having that very high order, that very ideal form. So we come back to the fact of this encompassing. So they have three different philosophy. So if you want to run a country, you will adopt Confucianism, because Confucianism lay out all the hierarchy of things, right? But how a king should behave, what a king should do, right? How the official should behave himself and support the king, right? And then you have the family unit, and then how the father, how the kids, they have a certain format, a certain system. So this system gives stability to a country, a stability to the families, right? Of course, some of them may look at it as a caste system, but it's not that bad in a certain way, because they give stability. It's not that you can't overtake somebody and become the king, but don't forget, when something is chaotic, there will be civil war, and that's the time they elect and change hands, system change. So if someone want to relate to friends, relate to people, they will adopt Buddhism. Right? Buddhism is outright compassion, understanding thing of natures, and we should respect all forms of living animals. That's why, in a certain extent, that's why they have to be vegetarian, because animals move, and things that move, they don't eat them. So there is a certain compassion over there. So to relate to people is to adopt the attitude of the Buddhist, the Buddha, to be compassionate to all things. Now then, if one wants to participate in art, you will adopt Taoism, or a lot of them would refer to the book, the Tao Te Ching, So inside there you have some concept of the yin and the yang and the opposite. And of course, there's also a book about how the world is being viewed in a certain form, that there is this thing called Tao that permeates in everything, right? So a lot of them have actually make references to the modern physics, how, and also chaos theory, where there's explosion. So it's also written in Tao Te Ching, that in this chaos, things form, and then from nothing it becomes one, it becomes two, it becomes three. So if you look at the culture of the Chinese, is eclectic. That means they, the way they look at consistency, singularity, is different, right? So there's a lot of ways to accept many things. And don't forget, Buddhism comes from India, right? It wasn't a local thing, but it's adopted by the Chinese, right? Confucianism is a system, a teaching. So in the Chinese system, or rather in their culture, a lot of things are called teaching. It's not so much a religious kind of thing. In fact, if you ask me, although they have temples and all that, they are not praying to Almighty God, right? Even their so-called God, or their God, is actually a virtual form of people at a higher level, in the heaven, and there's another virtual form in the lower form, where in hell. So, but their system is all the same. You have the emperor up there, you have the emperor down there. You also have the emperor in the human form. So their cosmology is not a almighty God that rules everybody. There isn't an almighty God, and all these so-called God, they are also human. They are imperfection. So everything is to accept imperfection. That comes to the third point where the Chinese have this important concept of 中庸, the middle ground, right? Sometimes when you look at the word called 中国, I'm not so sure whether this word 中国 means they are the center of the universe. I'm not quite sure about that. But of course, if everybody becomes, if anyone's become powerful, he tends to think that he's the center. Every ruler thinks that they're center. So that may give an illusion that the word 中国 means they think that they are the center of the universe. But I don't think they ever would think that they are center of the universe because of their concept of 中庸. 中庸 means middle ground. Middle ground is not center in that sense that everybody got to obey me. No, it's not like that. Middle ground means when you look at two opposing things, you try to find a place where they meet. So that is the middle ground, 中庸. So that middle ground is very important in the Chinese concept. So extreme is actually bad for the Chinese. That's why when things go to the extreme, they will tell you it start to have a little bit of the yin. When yang went to the extreme, this opposing concept of yin and yang, thinking, you can take it as black and white. So when the black reached the extreme black, slowly there will be some light and you will see gray, and then slowly it become whiter and whiter, and then you have extreme light again, and then this extreme light will become slightly gray, and slowly become dark again. So it has paint a picture of a cyclical movement, and this whole thing is one thing in itself, because light and dark is the same thing. Dark is there's no light. If there's light, then you can see. So light and darkness is one. So this whole idea of complementarianism, although they are opposite in a certain way, they actually complement each other. So with that complementarism, you can see that how things comes together and how things move. So Middle Kingdom, to me, I really believe that is to find the middle ground. It's not to create opposing forces. Neither is it to create tension, but it's to create a peaceful ground where everybody can survive. So how can the world find a peaceful ground? I think that's important for every one of us who are staying on this earth. Right, so this is a three. I think it's a very three unique thing that I think I could gather from reading Chinese text and watching YouTubes and watching movies, and of course the most important is reading the books from people like Lao Tzu, Zhuangzi, and then maybe a little bit on Kongzi, because I love art so much, so I'd rather read a lot of Tao Te Ching than the rest. So anyway, that's something that I would like to share with you, Rao. Okay, thank you for watching.